Chico's gonna give you what? Rev is gonna give you what? Ben is gonna give you what? All three are gonna give you the Big D. Chico's gonna give you what? Rev is gonna give you what? Ben is gonna give you what? All three are gonna give you the Big D. Chico, Rev, and Ben, yep, they're at it again. Breaking down the team, putting stats up in your head. Nothing left unsaid, they're leaving it all on the field. Just like the favorite team, raising two cups and will shield. The knowledge isn't real for a trio so true to representing the gray, red, white, and blue. And you love them too, that you can't deny. So just one time, let me hear Dallas till I die. Chico's gonna give you what? Rev is gonna give you what? Ben is gonna give you what? All three are gonna give you the Big D. Chico's gonna give you what? Rev is gonna give you what? Ben is gonna give you what? All three are gonna give you the Big D. Soccer podcast? Huh.
Welcome to Big D After Dark this evening, our final episode of an eventful 2021 season. Didn't quite go our way or the way for FC Dallas that we wanted to see, but we still have a lot to talk about after a season-ending 1-1 draw in San Jose for FC Dallas. We'll break down that a little bit, talk about the coaching search, how we grade the team, and what's next for this team, and of course a little love to our boys, the United States men's national team. We're so excited to have you. We'll take your comments and questions live, shape the conversation. Thanks for joining us here on Big D After Dark. One more time. That's right. And there we are. We're live. We are live. A little stripped down setup here tonight, but we are ready to go. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this final show of our After Dark live podcast extravaganza experience. And it has been an experience this year with technical issues and all kinds of things, a lot of learning, but we're here to have fun, and we're excited to welcome a new voice to add some expertise and some perspective into the mix. Of course, I'm Nathan Hill. You can follow me at Nathan J. Hill on Twitter. I hope I remember everybody's Twitter handle. There, next to me is our good buddy Jose Carmona at El Chico Carmona. And Tommy LaBeouf down there below me on the Brady Bunch screen at Tom_FC Dallas. Did I get it right? I got it right. All right. And a new friend, Ismael Belcora, and it's at Belcora. Oh.
Belcora Ismael.
Okay, got it. At Belcora Ismael. Got it. On Twitter. Good. All right. We're glad to have you guys. And Ismael, thanks for joining us tonight. Just jumping in feet first into this mix of conversation and nonsense. All right. And of course, for the folks following us, watching with us, send in your comments, your questions. They pop up here. We can use them. They'll direct and change our conversation. We'll have some fun together. All right. So let's get right to it. We're going to start off with a post-game clip. I got to ask Marco Ferruzzi, interim head coach for FC Dallas, a question after the San Jose match. I basically said, give me your thoughts on the match, and then give us a sense of what you take for this FC Dallas team going forward. It's a few minutes clip. Let's just get ourselves situated and listen to what Marco has to say, and then we'll react at the close of this season.
No, we didn't achieve what we wanted to out of this year. There's definitely some lights that are, maybe for off the field, not in terms of results in the tournament, and getting into playoffs was an objective as well. We didn't reach that. In many ways, what you have to take in silver linings is the character that's come out of it in terms of applying that to next year. Consistent theme over the last couple of months. Especially when things started to take that turn where it looked like things were going to be an uphill struggle. Everybody showed up to play. Again, we didn't quite get the results that we needed, But even in a day like tonight, a game like tonight, you see sometimes teams or players capitulate, and that's hasn't been the case with any of the guys in the squad. So coming into an environment even like tonight, where it's a bit of a celebration for San Jose fans, Wondolowski, and credit to him for sure. They were playing a serious game. They were playing with attitude. They were playing professionally, and our guys showed up as well. And though we tied, we felt like we had an opportunity to win. These are all parts of the character building that we're going to take into next year. There'll be roster changes as is normal in the off season. We don't quite know what those are, what it's going to look like, but all of that is going to be informed by the year that we just had, Nathan. So we're going to use all of this information, not just pure stats, pure results, but the fact we did find success when you saw maybe some steely play out of the group, and I think that the group started to adapt into playing a little bit more of a pragmatic MLS style at times, and we were functional in it as well.
All right, there we go. We just heard from Coach Marco, interim head coach Marco Ferruzzi, with his comment, which I think is interesting about the team playing a little more of an MLS pragmatic style, team that didn't give up, even though things certainly didn't go their way. But a team who's also going to experience a lot of change. I felt a little hint of it was interesting in the post game, especially in the overall thing. There's a little bit of talk that since from him like that would indicate that he thinks he's going to be around a little bit longer. He's going to be making some decisions, and he may be longer than that. I don't know. That was just the sense, and maybe that should be okay. He has got the job right now. Why shouldn't he talk like it? But I'm just curious, you guys, if it lined up with what you saw on the field. Did we see under Coach Marco Ferruzzi, after Luchi Gonzalez was fired, did we see a more pragmatic style? Did we see this team grow and get better or stronger enough to give Marco a nod for locking down the job permanently? Jose, we'll start with you.
Well, listening to him talk, how do you say rebuilding year without saying rebuilding year? Because pretty much what he was saying, it's like the foundations, we're going to take it to next year. And honestly, that's pretty much what it sounded like to me. Like, hey, we're in rebuilding mode, but he didn't come out and say it. And, pragmatic, if you're saying, hey, go out there and don't embarrass us, that's pretty much he achieved that. They went out there and they, there was no more 3-3 shootouts, 4-3 shootouts, whatever that we're getting there at tail end with Lucci. But I don't know. I don't think he's done enough to convince me that he's the guy going into next year. At least not if you're trying to excite the fan base. If that's your goal, is to get the fan base excited, that's not going to happen. But he clearly knows the club, and he gave playing time to the guys that are likely to come back next year and are potentially going to improve, Tuamasi, Tafari, Cirillo, Cervania, all these guys, all these young guys, I thought got good extended runs that will serve them good into next season. And, I don't know. I'm not convinced he's the guy for the job, but even if he doesn't get the job, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he'll remain as an assistant on the team. So he's not going anywhere. Whether he remains the top man, I can't say.
Mm-hmm. Tommy, what about you?
Yeah, I don't know that he showed me anything, and I didn't expect him to come in and change the world either, because for the whole year I watched his team play. I watched his team open up at home, playing not to lose with Lucci, and I saw a lot of things that question what kind of team we had. Now, do I think it's a bad team? I don't know. It's not necessarily a bad team. I think we have good players. I think that, as we said before, we don't have a couple superstars that other teams have that could make the difference in the whole world. I think there are a couple positions right back that start off with Munjoma. Like, no disrespect to Munjoma, but he's not a starter in MLS in my book. And he had no competition to be pushed to be a starter initially. You know, we didn't see Justin Che for a whole month or so. I mean, where'd this guy come from? I didn't even know who Justin Che was because I just hadn't been following the other leagues. But you know, if we take a step back and we go back, my analogy would be when Lucci got the job, everybody was like, "Yeah, Lucci can do it." I remember Daniel Robinson, the guy that used to run the digital media for FC Dallas. He posted, he said, "You know, this this team is going to do everything for Lucci," and they did. I think they did. But honestly, we've talked before, is it the coaching or the players? My weight is going to be like, we need to have a little better of a lineup than the coaching. You know, I think, you watch the USA play. Pereira and Pepe, we had Acosta, Zimmerman. All these are FC Dallas players that were around the last 5-6 years where we have not been a good team, but they were with other good players. Did you see how good Ferreira was with the 1-2 with McKinney getting that goal at the end? Ferreira almost got a goal on that little kickback. So I'm going to say, like we were a few years ago when Lucci came in, Peruzzi is an FC Dallas guy. And I would like to promote within the club, then bring someone that we don't know. You know, just as we talk about, hey, why are we bringing these players from South America, Central America that can't play? I like the USA players that we have, the young players that we have that give it all. They're from they're local. They're our players, but we need to supplement the team with a few superstars. Mario Diaz, and that may be Paxton, but Paxton has been recovering. We've seen a lot of flashes with Paxton. So anyway, answer the question. I would be okay with Ferruzzi. I don't think that he showed us anything, but I didn't expect him to.
All right, Ismael. We've already got a comment said turn up Ismael, so we're having some audio, so he'll talk loudly unless your roommates are snoring over there or something. But do your best.
I think what's most telling about this, and the kind of sad when you think about it, but the most telling thing is that there is not a lot of leeway when it comes to things, and when it's good and when it's not. Like there's a fine line, because this team has been a playoff team 8 out of the last 10 years, I think. And during that time, it has always had issues with players leaving. Always had issues with players leaving, but then we'd always be able to replace those players, and we'd always be stable, or generally make the playoffs, generally play well. And this season showed that the depth was really not good enough. That players that were supposed to step up and play in the spots where we lost, like a Brian Reynolds or a Thiago Santos, the players that were supposed to step up couldn't do it. And I think like it was interesting, because when you go back and look at what people were saying beforehand, like before the season started, is that there's a lot of that there was a lot of depth in this team. And I was like, yeah, I think most of us believe that Eddie Munjoma could take the step up, that we could replace Santos with someone else in the system, that we would be able to continue to build from within and create a good roster that could be competitive. And it's like I think that the dam broke, and it showed that like you can't continue to replace positions with players from the academy or from the second team without time to adjust, or sometimes the players just aren't good enough. Like you're not always going to be able to bring up a Brian Reynolds from the academy and create him into a superstar and like keep that talent. So you have to have contingencies, and that just didn't exist this year. There was no contingency for there was no contingency when there's no left mid. There's no real left mid until Sean arrived, and he never played, or he barely played. Mujoma could not perform, and Che after a while could not perform. Uh, what it showed really to me was there has to be stability. We have to have at least a few players that stay locked in on this team for the foreseeable future. Because if we keep allowing the revolving door and keep letting players out over and over and over throughout the season, at some point, like in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to be that kind of team that every single year is going to be written off as, well, they're not going to be in the playoffs. Let's just be honest. And that's not a good place to be.
Our buddy Todd Chatterley posted and comment that, to Tommy's point, 60 points when Acosta and Zimmerman were on the team in 2015 and 2016. Only MLS club to hit 60 in back-to-back seasons, and those were some good years. Yeah.
Furthermore to Ismael's point, is not only letting Santos and Reynolds go, but when were they let go, and when did their replacements come in? Santos was let go, was moved away. 1 week before season start? His replacement Kenyon came in 3 months later? When did Sean come in the middle of the season? I mean, come on, are we trying to win? Are we, the writing is on the wall. We're here to sell players. That's the bottom line, in my opinion.
And to fill the gap there, when Kenyon came in, Tesman had been starting in that position, and you
forgot about Tesman. Yeah, that's 3 guys. No contingency plan.
On the whole, us relying on the youth players. The problem with that, while in theory it should work, and FC Dallas is seen as this sort of factory of talent. The truth is there's a drop off from all the big name talent from the academy has already been promoted to the senior team or has been sold. Now the next wave that's coming up, your U19s, U18s, U17s, U16s, there's not a player on that roster. I think Cochran's the only player that comes to mind that people are saying, and Carrera, I say, the goalkeeper, that could possibly help in the next year or two. There's no player on there that they're going to sign from that batch that isn't going to require 2 to 3 years on North Texas SC before they can even be ready to help out the team. Now there's a ton of talent coming in the U15s, U14s. That's the next big batch of talent, but you've got a 4-year gap. And like I said, those players, you're gonna get players like Munjoma, you're gonna get players like Hernandez, stuff like that are too good for North Texas SC, but not quite good enough to step in and start for FC Dallas, or to be key contributors off the bench. And I see what FC Dallas is trying to do, but with the ebbs and flow of talent, that's really not possible. They need to come to realization. The big change in the last 5 years that has happened is MLS's level has gone up. Maybe not. I want to bring out the Euro snobs and say, oh, blah, blah. No, seriously, MLS has improved as a league. And it used to be that you could bring in a player from South America to come in and be a starter for you, after some acclimation. That's no longer the case. You can't just grab a guy who was a star in Colombia and guarantee that he's going to be a productive starter in MLS. And that's what's changed in the last 4 or 5 years. MLS has gone up and just enough that you can't just bring any player from South America and make him a guaranteed starter or give him a guaranteed starting spot. You can't. You saw it with Obrian. It took him a full half season to get going, and there's people out there who are still not convinced he should be our starter next year. Because of how bad it was the first half of the season. And I don't know. I'm just saying it's FC Dallas needs to upgrade the level of free agents they bring in. Even if they can still keep going with the South American, but they need to spend more. They need to simply get better quality prospects if they want to keep going the prospect route.
Well, to Ismael's point, I think, part of that 2015, 2016 team, they had these veteran MLS guys who maybe weren't world beaters, but a Minor Figueroa, Atiba Harris, Javon Watson. You had these guys who were kind of a little bit of projects, but were also veterans and were just going to be steady and give you minutes in key positions and in key spots and not do anything really terrible, and it ended up being vital cogs. And we certainly, thought maybe Fafa Pico was going to be that. Man, he did quite well in Houston. I mean, relatively, but still, we missed some veteran presence. I mean, there are times when we thought, Fafa or a Dominique Baji or a Tesho would have been great on a team this season to give you some vital minutes,
Brisson had a lot of giveaways in the back of the final third, and he had those PKs he gave away. Quignon was giving the ball away as well. I mean, he looked old on the field. Ricarte, when he got in the middle, I don't think Ricarte is a bad player. I just think he's not a good fit for our team. And, those are three. And then I always say this, and I'll repeat myself, and I don't care. I'll say it again. Acosta, as good as he is a defender, he's an attack killer. You don't see people on the U.S. national team airing the ball to the goal from 50 yards out or whatever it is when you got all these talent up front, right? You pass the ball to Pulisic dribbles, and you get a nice serve in the box. You don't get that with Acosta. He's a coach killer, in my opinion.
Well, you could also argue that he's used incorrectly. I was going to say Ricarte, to me, is Aranguiz 2.0. He's basically another player they brought in who simply didn't fit the system we're running, and they never figured out how to use him. Clearly, the guy has talent, but you keep playing him in the wrong spots. I would argue that that's also the case for you see with Pamico. He's being played in the wrong spot. I mean, Thomas Roberts, another player that as talented as he is, couldn't get on the field. These are simply players that, they should have done what Philadelphia did with El Metkahar, who basically we got the homegrown rights from Philadelphia because they don't use wingers in their system, and so they have a talented winger, and Dallas uses him. That's really what Dallas should be doing with some of these players. That like Roberts. Hey, they don't fit the system. They can't hang on to them and hope that at some point we're going to be able to fit them in. Ricarte, the time he was here, they just, how hard is it to find, determine in a shorter span, hey, this guy's a fit or not a fit. They can't just sit on players for 2 years and hope that at some point they're going to figure out how to use them. They need to move on with these players at a faster rate.
So let Ismael jump in. You had something you wanted to add, Ismael.
I think so one of the facts at the beginning of the season that in retrospect is kind of incredible and also really telling is that in 2021, with Fafa leaving, we were, I think, the only team in MLS to not have a single player on the roster that used to play for another MLS team. We were the only team in MLS. And that's why I think, there is a spending issue. But even if you have just the Hunt's idea of spend very little, even with that concept, there's so much talent in MLS that could just be steady and not much else that could bring you stability. And to Nathan's point, those Javon Watsons and Atiba Harrises, they're not going to start for you every week, but when they come off the bench, they will actually do something. They're actually going to perform. If someone gets injured, they will step up to the plate and perform well. So one thing that I'm really looking this season is if we don't sign a player from within an MLS, from an MLS team, hopefully, in my opinion, and I think we will get into specifics later on, a center back with MLS experience to help solidify the team. If we don't sign a player from within MLS, then it's telling that the ownership and the technical staff don't understand what an MLS team needs and are simply looking for products that they could sell for a high price and make money. Because it seems really obvious, no?
But they have brought players. They didn't have it this year, but we brought Picard, we brought Baji, we did bring players in the past from other teams, and they didn't work out at all either. So, You know,
Yeah, but the difference is this season we didn't make the playoffs, and I
Sure.
know that it's not. I know it's a cumulative thing, and there are going to be players that are not up to snuff, but it's it's a false. It might be a false equivalency, but at the same time, this is one of the worst seasons we've had.
oh,
in MLS.
absolutely, no doubt,
So
no doubt.
I want to add something to that, by the way. There is a problem that the Hunts have that not a lot of other teams have. And while, yes, they should bring in more MLS talent from within the league, at the same time, they have to be careful not to block the pathway of some of their academy players that, I mean, are you going to be able to get an MLS guy that's going to be better than Cerrillo or Cervania? Because the answer is no. If you can't find someone in MLS that you're willing to pay for that can come in and who can't beat out Cervania or Cerrillo on a weekly basis, then why bring them in at all? I'm just telling you, their point of view is you're going to bring in guys from in the league, but if you believe Tuamasi is better at right back than anyone else you're going to get in a position that is traditionally weak within the league, by the way, that's an issue that they have to figure out is can you Picault, we're all talking about Picault. Let's be honest. Picault is a good player on a bad team.
Oh, I'm not going to buy that one. I'm not a fan of him.
I'm just saying, people were like, "Oh, Fafa's having a great year." His team wasn't. So I'm sorry if they were playoff teams, and I'd be okay. We screwed up, but I don't think we did. I remember Picault disappeared at times. Just the same issue we had with Lama, disappeared at times. This year, Paxton disappeared over on the wing, but that's because he's being played out of position.
And he's also injured.
And I mean, everyone knew that this was a year that we had to just swallow and just say, hey, we need to just get him on there, and hopefully next year he'll come back stronger. And, okay, that's great. I can live with that. But at the same time, any MLS player that come in, the question is, do we have somebody in the academy that's just as good, or we feel is going to get blocked by this person? And I don't think there's a good answer for that. I mean, yes, the answer is yes, there are players if you're willing to spend the right money, which the Hunts have proven year in and year out that they're not willing.
But they did spend money on.
I think it's a balance, right? Because, yeah, if you're referencing Cerrillo and Cervania, there aren't probably a lot of MLS players that are that would be better and also kind of cheap, at their level. You couldn't really find that many in MLS. But for another position, are you telling me that we could not find a decent 400K center back in MLS that could replace Brisson or Martinez? We definitely could. There are at least 5 players in the recent free agency list that just got released that are center backs that are definitely better than both Martinez and Brisson. So that's the balance, right? I mean, yes, you have to be careful about who you sign, especially if you are an academy-driven team. But again, I'm going to reference the center back position because it's really infuriating to me how they dealt with it this season. There are no center backs currently from U16 up that are going to make an MLS team anytime soon. There are maybe Pranav Dubrov, I think that's how you pronounce it, but it's fringe, and he's 18, and you're not going to play an 18-year-old. So why are we spending a cumulative of 1.3 million on 2 center backs on their wage bill when there are players like Josh Williams in Columbus who won 2 MLS Cups and was a starter for most of that time, and who's now a free agent? I know last year he wasn't, but you could have signed him for, I'm assuming, a lot less that you signed both of those players. So that's the balance, and the fact that that they haven't signed a good MLS player, a good player that's played in MLS in a long time, is another issue. That's big.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, but let's take a further look at those center backs. You have Hedges coming back next year.
I like Jafari.
You're stuck with Martinez because he's his contract's guaranteed, and you got Tafari. Brisson, you can let go. So let's replace Brisson. Here's where the problem comes. Are you going to bring in somebody that's going to take away minutes from Tafari? That's an issue. That's an issue because if you bring in somebody to be your third center back, which they probably will, the question is this guy a guy you're going to start ahead of Tafari, or is Tafari going to be your third center back, in which case then you need to go get a fourth center back. And if you're going to go to fourth center back, don't you already have Kaiser from North Texas that you could just promote and make him?
And you have the draft coming up. I would think they get a center back in the draft.
But that's where they need to hurry up and make a decision, the manager, because the manager needs to make that decision to come in.
Oh, the dominoes.
And make that and decide, hey, who is that guy going to be? Can we find somebody better than? Okay, let's say you decide Tafari is your number 2 guy, and you got Martinez, who's injured a lot this year. There's no guarantee he's going to be healthy next year.
Right, and there's no guarantee we haven't seen the peak of Hedges. I mean,
Yeah, Hedges is not getting any younger. You took the words out of my mouth there.
I honestly think Tafari is the only lock at center back right now.
I love Tafari. I think he's going to be good.
Yeah, no one like Hedges, even if he's healthy next year. I mean, he's aging, and I mean, at some point, like he's already started declining. But even if he plateaus and stays at the level he's at right now, he's going to continue to decline at some point. So I mean, Martinez is not an MLS starter and should not be. And if you can get rid of him, which I know is going to be very difficult, you should. Like even if you lose money, but which the Hunts will probably not be happy about, but that's what you should do. You should not re-sign Brisson, which I think is sadly a legitimate possibility with Sonata at the helm. So like it's a balance, and I think that there are a lot of center backs coming up in the draft that could be really good backups, like Mariano Fazio at Tulsa, who played for Innocentes FC in Irving and was training with North Texas for a while. But at the same time, again, this was one of the worst defenses we've seen, and I cannot. If Hedges is not going to be at the level that he was, you have to have a good backup, and Martinez is not a good backup, and Brisson, who we hopefully don't re-sign, is not a good backup. So
yeah, if I may, we started the season out with Hedges hurt, and then we had to play Brisson. Brisson was a liability, and Martinez got hurt, and Tafari got in. So we really didn't see our top center backs playing, right? I mean, it would have been Hedges, and I think Martinez was but I think Martinez was a bad signing. I don't
rotating. We had like a rotating. We never had a consistent center back duo.
Yeah.
But
right back.
There's a lot of negativity. But I want to say that there is some bright stuff on our team. If you don't mind, for just be real quick. Ferreira, Pepe. I mean, there was definitely a lot of highlights from those two guys. Cervania and Cirillo in the middle. They played well. Edwin in the right back did some good things at the end of the year, and then O'Brien had some good games at the end of the year. But this team doesn't have a superstar. It doesn't have a Pulisic that made a difference in the game in the USA. I say there is a foundation here for this team to be very good, but it doesn't have that superstar. And some of the positions do need to be bumped up a little bit. But it's it shows on the results.
Yeah, I think they definitely need to create competition across the board. Yes. Bring in another right back, bring in another center back, MLS level. And to Ismael's point, you get a guy from MLS, they can perform in MLS as opposed to taking a gamble from some South America who may come in and totally bottom out. And taking too many of those chances is one of the things that I think sunk us. And stability, but
yeah, Keyon could barely run. I mean, he looked very whole in the field. I mean, that's not the guys that we want to sign.
And I always wonder about Keyon because I think he came onto the team after already playing a season. So, he may need this offseason more than anybody. He may come in with a little fresher take, and we may be surprised. But I don't know. But guys, we do have a superstar in this team. I mean, other than Ricardo Pepi. We have and Sean, but we have goal scorer wonder, legend
but not superstars.
Franco Jara.
They're rising stars. Those are rising stars. They're not superstars. They're not players who when the game's on the line will come, snatch victory from the jaws of defeat.
They're up and coming, definitely up and coming with Ferrero.
Yeah. But I'm saying Dan Hunt said we have a goal scoring machine in Franco Jara. I mean, we're spending $3 million on the guy. Like,
yeah, so we do have to say that he did spend that money to bring that guy in, and oh my gosh, it could be money better spent, for that price.
Our Pepe's our only hope. I mean, he goes for a record sale, and then the Hunts can take that money and use it to buy out Martinez and Jara and Quignon and Acosta and just clear the board.
Well, I would also say Ferreira's on the block too. I don't think there's any guarantee that Ferreira's coming back for sure. I mean,
I also think that if it would be great if the Hunts would buy out Jara, if they would buy out Quignon, if they would buy out Martinez. Any of those three would be great buyouts. But we're kidding ourselves if we think the Hunts will swallow that money. It's just not going to happen. The Hunts, they will never admit to a bad investment. They will never admit to it. He still thinks Jara is great. So,
and the other thing is that I'm sorry, finish.
I just think that Jara is just what we have to do is just ignore the 2.9 million price tag, however hard that is, and just keep using him as in the most effective way he can perform, which is the last 20 minutes of a game where he will press the center backs for 10 minutes, get tired, and then do a really good play, like a good pass or a ninja kick that ends up turning into a goal. So,
well, you can definitely see he was a good player. He's lost a step, right? I mean, he's got some good touches, and his role that he played. I mean, I commend him when he came in the game. He's a team player. But what I was going to say is that when we lose players, we don't get new players in right away. Remember? So, like when we lost Santos, when did we get Quignon? It was a few months later, right? When did we get our left winger in? So I would be surprised if we get any replacements on for the first day of the game, first week of the season next year. I think that we're looking more players coming in the summer again. I think that may have something to do with the schedule. I don't know what it is, but it's just ridiculous that when we lose players, we don't get players right away. So I'm expecting the worst.
So far, I've been following soccer enough to know, and when a teammate is struggling, a player is struggling, and maybe not living up to expectations, but they start talking about how good he is in the locker room. It's kind of like when you're on that blind date, and they say, "Yeah, well, I want you to meet my friend." He goes, "You say, oh, well, is she cute?"
Exactly.
And they say, "Oh, she has a great personality." Like, all right, okay, they're a great teammate. All right, good. Well, all right, but sometimes we could take a jerk of a teammate as long as they do some amazing stuff on the field. Well, let's shift over, because there's so much time we could spend thinking about it. So, I posed this question in the After Dark article a little bit ago, last week about kind of, three kind of scenarios that are pretty generic, no hot takes there. But there is a core to this team, and this team could go in with a lineup roughly of Ferreira, Schun, O'Brien, Paxton, Cervania, Cerrillo, maybe Hedges, Tafari, Hollingshead, Twumasi, and Mara and goal. Kind of a steady lineup, and we know that team wouldn't be the least talented team in the league, but it's hard to imagine that young guys are just gonna take the enormous step up to really have the team compete. Maybe they would. Maybe anything's possible. So do they kind of stay pat and tinker around the edges? Do they do some tweaking, let go of some guys, bring in 5 to 10 new faces, or do they blow this thing up? And I'm hearing in the mix of conversation that we might have some disagreement about which direction they go. So Ismael, you were saying if they could buy out all these guys, they should. So you would be kind of in favor of blowing this thing up and really having a major turnover. But I know you're realistic too. So where do you think FC Dallas goes from here?
Well, I think the first step is definitely the head coach. which I think if we don't get it before MLS Cup, is definitely a bad sign. If we don't get a new head coach by MLS Cup, there's a problem. Mainly because of how the protected list works, and if Sonata's making all the roster decisions for the protected list and who gets let go, then there's definitely an issue. If the head coach doesn't have any involvement in that. But if we're just talking about what I want the roster to look like next season, it also completely depends on who leaves. Like Tommy said, Jesus might be gone. Pepe's definitely gone. And another player that I think we should be commenting on is if Shun keeps. I mean, I know that the World Cup qualifiers are done, but if Shun leaves because of how he's performed and because of the fact that I haven't seen him play for a while, making it look like he's just a stash and sell signing, that we have left wing to be an issue again, as it has been since Fabian Castillo left. Like what it feels like at this point as an FC Dallas fan 115 years ago. So if those three are all gone, then that means 3 out of the 4 like forward area positions are now empty and don't have a starting caliber player. And if you don't like Obrion, which I don't, then that's 4 spots that you need to replace. So that's not going to happen. It's just not. I think when it comes to like up like at the forward position, like in the striker and the wingers and the attacking mid, you only sell Jesus if a really crazy offer comes. Because actually, I think you sell him if you get like a good offer, not crazy. Because the issue is his contract also ends pretty soon, and he doesn't have any options, and he wants to go. So you also don't want to lose money and just not get anything off of him. So you like him playing for the U.S. is pretty good for you because that means that he's playing well on an international stage. So since Pepe's going to leave, you need a new striker. I would argue you don't spend it on a DP because the last time you did that, it did not go very well, and that's actually a good spot where you can get a really good MLS player if you could. That's I think what you should be going for, an MLS player that could get you 10 to 13, 14 goals a season, consistently, would be great. Those are few and far in between for those who are available, but that's what you should do. I think that where you spend your DP, if they want to spend for a DP this offseason, which I think they do, is at defensive mid. Because Cerrillo is really good, but I think we need a player that can cover the entire length of the field. And Cerrillo is really good at what he does, which is stretching the field out with his possession, but he is not a defensive mid that covers the rest, that covers the back line. He's not that kind of player. So I think you really need a defensive mid. I think you need a starting center back. I know that you guys think Hedges. I know some of you think Hedges can start next season. I'd just be very careful with that because again, at this point, I think it's fair to call him injury prone, and we cannot go into the season with Martinez being the center back next to Farah. We cannot. That's only 3 signings that I've said. If we were able to keep Shun and Jesus, 3 signings doesn't seem that crazy to me. That seems like something doable. I think it's tinkering, if we want to call it tinkering. But again, if Jesus leaves, Shun leaves. If Tumasi gets injured in the offseason, which would be terrible in my opinion as a Tumasi fanboy, then we have a serious problem. So then it's been blown up, and we have to replace all these positions.
Shun is an interesting thing because, he started for Hungary the other day, and he hasn't been starting for FC Dallas. And now that brings into question, why not? Right? Because we definitely need a left winger. So are we not trying to show what he can do so he will stay with us next year? What's going on with that? Because that doesn't jive, right? FC Dallas not starting, Hungary international World Cup qualifier starting. You know, my good season ticket holder next to me is like, why is Sean not starting? And it's a great question. I think there's more to it. I mean, there's something going on there. I don't know what, but it's definitely not for winning and losing.
Well,
It
I
doesn't
think
make sense.
he was starting when Lucci was here. Is when Marco took over that he'd stopped starting, and that's because I
Correct.
think Marco simply doesn't rate him. You know, that's I don't know why, but he basically had to choose between starting Schoen or Paxton, and he chose Paxton. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, it's Schoen or Paxton. You can't start them both. So
Let's move Paxton to the midfield, right?
which come on now, that's not gonna
I'm
happen.
I'm still
But I
over here.
I have a suggestion.
All
by
right,
the
go
way.
ahead, Jose.
Since our DPs are, let's face it, we haven't been excited about DP in a while. And we know Ferreira, who I know teams are interested, but there's nobody offering anything for him yet. And his contract, you know, he's got what, like a year left, extension left maybe. I don't see why you don't sign him to a DP contract. Make him the first homegrown DP. He's a proven player at MLS. He's a guy who's still on the rise. And then you guarantee that he'll at least be here for another year or two. And teams will have to basically make a really big offer for him, so he can't just walk. You know, I don't see why not. You're not gonna be able to replace Pepe, but you could replace him with Jesus. Now, if they lose Pepe and Jesus, now we've got a problem. But I think having Jesus around when Pepe is gone, that softens that blow, because you could push Jesus up to be your number 9. Your number 9. So
Well,
even if it's just a false 9, but I'm just saying,
Jesus as a DP.
name
why not?
name one player whose first game was against Mexico in a World Cup qualifier at a 9. Jesus Ferreira. He came in and played as a 9 at that level. That guy is going to be leaving us.
Yeah, I think that's the main issue, right? When Paxton and Jesus signed those big contracts that everyone was talking about back in 2018, Paxton signed a contract with like three option years. Jesus signed a contract with 0 option years. That tells me that Jesus wanted to go at the end of his near the end of his contract, because at that point, when you don't have options, there is no guarantee that you stay with the team after that, because then your contract is over. So the fact that he doesn't have options on his contract tells me that when his contract was close to, when the contract is going to end in 2022, he wants to be gone by that point. He has aspirations for Europe. We know Paxton's not, he has aspirations, but he's diehard FCB. And for me, that just Jesus' contract tells me he wanted to go, and I think him playing at the level that he has this season proved that he's really trying so that some European team can come and get him.
He's faster than Pepe, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, you could give him a Reggie Cannon type contract where you basically say, hey, structure it in a way where we have to sell you, but you keep him around for another year or two. I think you could do that with Jesus. You probably can't do that with Pepe.
Well, and the one thing working against FC Dallas in this too is that if Ferreira can lock down a starting spot, and he goes into FC Dallas his next season, stays with the team and earns consistent minutes and gets a World Cup spot, that the whole timing is he'll be a free agent post World Cup, right? Since World Cup's all in the winter. I mean, there's some of that timing that really works against FC Dallas, but I don't think he would do wrong with FC Dallas if they said, look, we'll give you a nice raise and, but we'll let you go for a reasonable price. And then, he probably would say yes to that. I don't know. I don't know.
Because he's not going to hand Pepe no money, at least not right now, but given a year or two after Pepe's gone, he could easily elevate to that level. So
we heard that Pepe wants to leave, right? But I think it's good for them to stay here and get the minutes and be ready to go for World Cup.
It's good for the World Cup. I mean, really, that's the only selling point. The only selling point for keeping them in Dallas for another year is the World Cup.
Sure.
Go to another team, and then there's no guarantee that they're going to get minutes in the U.S. because they're fighting to be on another team.
I think that's a plus for FC Dallas.
Yeah.
Well, look, we need to wrap up here in a minute, so we're going to finish with our highs and lows. But first, I just want you to know that I'm still reeling from our friend Ismael here saying that he doesn't rate Obrian, but he rates Tomasi, and I can't.
I think Obrian has definitely proven toward the end of the season he's worth being a starter, more than not. Mm-hmm.
So I think I should clarify. Oberon has performed higher than expectations at the end of the season, and I think his goal tally shows that he started to adapt to the league. I just think that at times like this, the eye test is really important. I really think, especially when it comes to talented like our wingers and their skill and their ability to take players one-on-one, to give good crosses into the box, that the eye test is important. And when you compare the minutes we've seen from Shun and the minutes where we've seen from Obrian still does the thing that he started the season as, where he runs at a player and generally loses the ball.
I disagree there.
It's lowered. It's lowered. It's lowered over the season. Like at the beginning of the season, it was atrociously bad how much his ability to pass defenders were. I mean, it's improved, but I still think he loses the ball way too frequently. He dives a lot less, but he still dives, and it's still more than any other player on the team. He still dives a lot. I think I wouldn't mind him starting next year. I think if he continues his progression, he's going to become much better. Like he's going to become really good. And I think what was said by FC Dallas on Twitter that not FC Dallas. I think this was Eddie who said it on his personal account that Barrios was really bad his first year. That is true. Barrios was not good in 2015 when he first came. So I think Obrian, I want to give him another season, but I don't know, man. It's just the amount of times he dives and does falls over, and the amount of times he isn't able to pass defenders is too much in my opinion. Whereas Emma Tumasi doesn't lose the ball. So Emma Tumasi, I've never seen him lose the ball when it's at his feet. Like I don't remember a time when he's done. I know there's different positions, but
that kind of comes and goes with the position, right? If you're playing right back, you're possession, but when you're playing a right wing, you have to go take people on, and you're going to lose the ball or you're going to get a shot off. He did have a beautiful cross to Jesus in the final games of the season, and he scored some really nice goals at the end of the year. And his touches in the final third, his cutting, he was breaking people's ankles. Now, I think he's a little, and he's not tough, strong like Barrios was, but he's definitely, in my opinion, proven that he can start. I still would like to have some other wingers, I don't feel like we have another winger on the team.
And I want to add that to what Tommy just said. The problem isn't Obrian as a starter. The problem is that there's nobody behind him. He played, 34 matches? I mean,
right.
Was he the Iron Man this year for the team? I think of all the players that started games, I don't think anybody started or played as many minutes as Obrian. We all took turns kicking him and saying how bad he is and how bad he's done. And I know I've done it, and I know everybody here has done it. Mm-hmm. And I know he finishes in strong. But this guy got almost no rest. This guy played almost every single match this season, and it's something that nobody's given him credit for. And I like to see how he does next year with a little rest. Having, maybe El Metcalf will make the step, or Redzik or somebody, they'll bring in somebody where he can actually rest him. Because think about it, 34 games, that means that he was playing even in midweek games. So here's a guy who basically wasn't getting the rest or rotating out like everybody else.
And because we didn't have anybody on the other side, he was getting a lot of attention.
So I'm okay with Obrian being the starter next year, but I would like them to bring in somebody to compete with him, to push him to get better, because if you're not fighting for your job, there's no reason for you to improve. And that's honestly all they need. They need to bring in somebody to compete with Obrian so that he doesn't have to start 34 games. Play in 34 matches next year. He can rest if he's nicked up. We don't know if he had any injuries because the guy was, you never heard him complain about or hobble off or anything.
Can Vargas do what Brian did and become a good player?
I think Vargas is getting his loan terminated. So
Yeah, Vargas is already in Venezuela, according to his Instagram. He's already chilling there.
Man, he only played a couple minutes that last game, and I don't know how he could even look any worse, man. It was terrible.
But that's just it. He looks great in North Texas. Too good to be playing in North Texas, but not good enough to play in FC Dallas, which is a reoccurring theme with a lot of players.
Well, let's end with our highs and lows. This has been a great conversation. The night is stretching on. So one high point, one low point from the season. I'll start, and I'll just say, because there's plenty of obvious choices. So I'll just say Tafari, just great. Almost another one of those guys that FC Dallas sort of lucked into and who stepped up, and we just saw the growth of the guy. And a guy who has a lot of personality, a lot of style, is a fun guy, looks like, to have around the team for social media, for it just seems like a great guy. Low point, gotta say, there's so many, but definitely when Hara missed that PK a few games back, which at least could have tied the game up or put the game into a win column. But anyway, just one of those things where you're just like, man, let's fast forward this season. Let's fast forward it. All right, Jose, what about you?
I'm going to go with the obvious. The high, of course, is not one but two, Pepe and the return of Jesus, breaking out of that sophomore slump. So those two guys, to me, are the high of the season. The main reason why people had a reason to go watch the team even when they were losing is because you want to see those kids play. My low is the decline of Matt Hedges, because we talk about all the reasons that the defense struggled, but we as fans took for granted what a cog Hedges, and we just expected him to be there and be solid all year round, and that didn't happen. He had the injuries, and then when he came back, I'm sorry, but I thought Berzon was outplaying him, because even Hedges was giving up PKs and getting, he was playing subpar because he clearly wasn't healthy, and we don't know if that's I heard his injury is back related. There's no guarantee that he may even recover, and be back to his former self. So I think for me, that's the low, is coming to realization that the rock that holds that backline, that holds this team together, may be crumbling and may need to be replaced. We don't know for sure how bad his injury is, but like I said, when he came back, you could tell he was not the Matt Hedges of old, and now you have to really worry. Ismael's been saying we need another center back. He may be right, and it may not be to replace Berzon or Martinez. It may be to replace Matt Hedges.
All right, Tommy, your turn.
Yeah, I think, we got to give it up to Jesus and Ferreira. Those guys have really stepped up. I would say, Ferreira, but Pepe, but Ferreira is just taking up another notch. And even at the U.S., even Pepe too. Brian, as we just talked about, he is definitely, the end of the season, he improved by leaps and bounds. And Tafari, I thought, did a great job when he got in the game. And I was a little surprised. I don't know if he got injured or not, but at some point they took him and was not playing him. So I think Edwin at right back has been solid, and Cervania at the end of the year played well in the midfield, if not spectacular, solid, right?
You're gonna pick one? You did the whole team.
Well, no, those guys. Those guys who are above average. I want to just shout out to them that they really, stepped up. They really improved. O'Brien was night and day from game one to the end of the year, and same thing a little bit for Cervania, and definitely Tonassi when he got in the game originally first. It was he grew a little bit every game, right? And the lows, definitely the back line, but I think the low has got to go to Zanata for his roster manager this year, selling Santos, selling Tessman in the middle of the year, bringing Quignon in the middle of the year, signing Vargas in the middle of the year as a starter. We started Minjoma at the right back. the low point, low goat is Zanotto.
All right. And last but not least, our new friend Ismael. Take us home.
I'm gonna start off with low because I want to end on a high.
Okay. Good.
But I think the low point for me was the Houston game where we lost 3-2. I mean, it had been accumulating at that point. After we won, we had like those 3 wins and a draw in the middle of the season. We couldn't win for like 10 straight games or something like that, something very depressing. And everything that happened in that Houston game, uh, it was my second away game that I ever attended. And the first one with like the supporters, and it just was really deflating. Even Overeem scoring 2 goals at the end couldn't really do anything. And after that, like the next day, Lucci got fired, and it was just like I know that firing Lucci was probably the right move, but I think a lot of us haven't reflected that it's a really sad departure because of how much he's put work into this team since he joined the academy like
I agree with that.
a decade ago. It's very sad that he left this team on such a low note after how well he was able to coach a team for 2 years in his first head coaching job, his first professional head coaching job, and then leaving the team that he bled for on a very low note, on the worst season for FC Dallas in a long time. And I think the high note was lifting Copa Tejas. I think it was a really fun thing to like. All the games I've been to this year, except for like 2, have been with the supporters, and the amount of joy and jubilation that came from it. How much the supporters like were jumping and cheering for like after the Har's goal until like 20 or 30 minutes after the game ended. That's all they were doing. Lifting Copa Tejas, beating Austin twice in a year where they thought they would dominate. It's
Was it
the
3
only
times?
good thing that's come 3 times. My bad. Yeah, we beat them 3 times in a year that they thought they would dominate. The only good thing that's come out of this season, besides player performances, is the fact that we are the best team in Texas, which isn't saying a lot, but it's a great
Thank
feeling.
you for clarifying that. Appreciate
I'll
that.
take that too. Yeah, that is good. I mean, that is a nice thing, and hopefully something to build on next year.
Hey,
Well,
real quick,
sure.
I want to say something real quick. Lucci got let go, but there was also another coach that got let go, Grant Benny. I want to bring it up, and I forgot because Greg Benny I'm not saying his name right, but he is now the coach of the USA U20.
Varis,
So,
you mean?
yeah, did I say his name wrong?
Mikey Forrest.
Mikey Vargas,
Mikey
yeah.
Forrest, yeah.
So, not good for FC Dallas, but then, now he's at U20 USA. So, tell me what's going on here.
Yeah, and it sounds like Lucci turned down, maybe had an offer for the U20 or had some interest. They had some, and Lucci wanted to wait for that next head coaching job, and in the meanwhile they interviewed Varis and said, hey, this guy, comes from that tradition, knows Lucci's way, and and because his first outing was really rough, they got crushed, but it's going to take some time.
They managed to draw against Colombia in the second game. I don't know if they played the third game yet.
I guess time will tell what kind of coach Lucci is, because I don't know that he had a fair chance, is where I was going with that. Same thing with the coach that got promoted to USA. Are they bad coaches, or are they in the bad situation?
Well, let me tell you, that chum chat today was great to listen to. And I was intrigued because they, to get Tanner to get these guys to talk about Lucci. Sometimes people say, oh, they didn't like Lucci. Lucci, some of the youth, and I'm sure some of the youth players don't like their coach, for all kinds of reasons. Because we're people and we hold grudges. But like Tanner said, one of the things Lucci would always say is like, even in youth, the academy, was that you got to approach every day like someone else is going to take your job, because they might, so you got to play that way on the field. You got to come to practice with that attitude. You got to coach with that attitude. And so it sounded like Tanner loved Lucci and really respected him and wished that Lucci could have done better. But So yeah, I think Lucci is going to be all right. It may take a while for him to get that next head coaching job, but I think he'll land somewhere in between. But we'll see what Vars can do. We'll see.
Okay, on Varas, by the way, I had to kind of defend him on social media because some people were questioning his hire, and he's an assistant, and I'm like, all the people they went after turned that job down. So anybody with MLS head coaching aspirations pretty much turned that U20 job down. So the best thing you go after that is go after an assistant, preferably one from one of the top academies in MLS. So I mean that narrows it down to an assistant from FC Dallas, Philadelphia, Red Bull. And that's about it, And so you went and got a guy that was assistant for FC Dallas. I mean that's brilliant. You're getting one of the guys that knows the FCD academy well, And because he knows the academy, I'm sure he's knows some of the other top academies too. So I think that was a very smart move by the U.S. to get Mikey Vars in there. I don't know. I can't speak to the level of his coaching, but we will find out.
Neither. Yeah.
Well, let's leave it there, guys. I just want to thank you all for coming on tonight. I know there's a lot of news that will be breaking over the off season. Maybe we'll do an off season one at some point here, but. We just appreciate all of our listeners, all the folks following along. Of course, I'll load this up on our podcast on anchor.fm/Big D After Dark, and you can subscribe there, and or on Spotify and other places. So we're just grateful. And Ismael, thanks for joining us tonight and lending some thoughtful stuff. We're hoping it's a great off season. All right, well. Enjoy, everybody. Enjoy the off season, and of course, check out BigDSoccer.com for a lot of writing and reflection on where FC Dallas goes next. Have a great one, guys.
Yep. Have a great one.